Hi, friend. Welcome to the Scaling Therapy Practice. I'm James Marland, your course creation coach. I'm here to help therapists who want to scale their reach with effective online courses. I'll share with you all the tools, tips, and technology I've learned along the way that will help you put your mission in motion. The world is waiting for someone like you to take action.
It does sound way more difficult than keeping up with it every month for just, 30 minutes a month where you just devote that time. I know it's eat the frog now because your future self will thank you for it and take care of it now when it's relevant, when you actually remember what you bought and the transactions are fresh in your mind. So you're not having to go back 12 months ago to figure out what the heck did I buy?
Welcome to the Scaling Therapy Practice. I'm really excited to share with you this episode with Carla Titus and some more financial tips for running your business. Before we get into that, I want to let you know about an amazing opportunity we're going to have with author and podcaster Jay Allison. If you've been wondering about how to use AI to augment your courses and course creation, but you don't want to sound like everybody else, like you don't want to have low value content that doesn't sound like a human, you're in for a real treat, because on Friday, February 28th at 10:30 a.m., Jay Allison is going to teach us some tools and tips she's been using to create human-centered, human-sounding AI in your course creation and your course content. We'll dive in on how to use AI, not just to generate content, but also to augment, elevate, and deliver on your unique teaching style. As information becomes more cheaper and easier to produce, what's really going to stand out is the ones that don't sound like everyone else. People will buy your voice, your content. So don't just settle for what AI can produce. Use AI, but use it to augment your voice. And we're going to gain some insights from Jay Allison on that. So that's going to be Friday, February 28th. It's a free webinar, live webinar with Jay Allison, Friday the 28th at 10:30 a.m. Go to coursecreationstudio.com/AI with Jay to register. That's coursecreationstudio.com/AI with Jay to register for this amazing event. Now we're going to join in our conversation with Carla Titus. She's a fractional CEO of Wealth and Worth Within. And she's going to share her insights on planning for making 2025 a great success. We're going to discuss the importance of a regular financial check-in and how carving out just a small amount of time to pay attention to your finances can pay off big dividends for your decision-making and financial planning. So join me for this awesome and inspiring information with Carla Titus on the Scaling Therapy Practice. Hello and welcome to the Scaling Therapy Practice. This is your host, James Marland. This is the show where we empower mission-driven leaders to launch life-changing online courses. I'm really happy to bring Carla Titus back to the show. She's a founder and CEO of Wealth and Worth Within. And if you've listened to a couple of the shows that I've done, accounting is not my favorite thing to do. Accounting and taxes is sort of like the monster under the bed, that I don't necessarily want to take out and look. And then when I do, it's like not as scary as I thought it was. But Carla and her team are people who can help you make sense of your numbers. So Carla, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me again. I am so excited to have this conversation. I think it's going to give people a lot of great actionable steps to take early in the year so that they are thinking themselves down the road for it.
Yeah, that's key. We were talking in the pre-show about how your future, if you do these things, your future self is going to love you. Like your future self is going to thank you and send you thank you. I'm so glad that, 2024 James or early 2025 James did these things in the early, because it's, it helps so much and saves so much time and angst and fear. I don't want to get in the topic too early, but if you don't do these things early enough, you're going to worry about them the whole year. Whereas you could have done them, 8 months ago and then have all that mental energy back. Before we get into that topic of doing things that your future self will thank you for, Carla, just give us a short introduction about what you do, who you serve, and what do you do and who you serve.
Yeah, so I'm Carla Titus, founder and CEO of Wealth and Worth Within. We are a fractional CFO firm that provides consulting and advisory services to growing group and private practices all over the US remotely with a US based team. And we also provide bookkeeping services because we understand the importance of financial health, and it starts with your books, believe it or
Mm.
not, and not at the time where you have to file your taxes, but really throughout the year to avoid being in that situation where you're trying to catch up last minute. And nobody likes to do it, so we might as well just tackle it when it's easier and simple as it's
Mm.
happening, because we'll know what's going on and not delay it, because again, your future selves will thank you for that. And obviously, if you're ready to delegate or outsource it, we're happy to take that on and help support you in that way. But that is the work that we do, and I think a lot of people benefit from that support, so they don't have to be concerned with it anymore.
Great introduction. And we are going to be talking about the topic of doing things now that your future self will thank you for, getting 2025 off on the right foot. And before we do that, can you talk, Carla, why should we do this now? Like why should we not put it off? What is the benefit to your business, to your personal health, your mental well-being, your future state? Like why should we do this now? Why should we do some of these things now?
Yeah, as an owner and CEO of your business, what you find is that you have a lot of competing priorities. You
Mm.
have a team you have to manage, you have, problems and things that come up, and you're pulling too many directions. So what you want to be doing is structuring this as simple as possible by carving out just enough time every week or every month to go through the books, make sure everything looks good. And if you're not the one doing it, outsourcing it to have someone do it for you and then report it back to you. And what this does is it maintains the integrity of your finances and your financial data, which ultimately should be helping you to make decisions long term. But for now, what we want to do is just focus on being accurate, focus on being up to date so we don't get behind. And at tax time, everybody is kicking and screaming because they forgot to do their books the last 12 months, and now they have to go recreate 12 months of data. Nobody wants to do
Oh,
that.
that sounds difficult.
It does sound way more difficult than keeping up with it every month for just, 30 minutes a month where you just devote that time. I know it's eat the frog now because your future self will thank you for it,
Mm.
and take care of it now when it's relevant, when you actually remember what you bought and the
Yeah.
transactions are fresh in your mind. So you're not having to go back 12 months ago to figure out what the heck did I buy?
So it's hard to remember what you did 11 months ago? Is that real? Wow.
Right.
Oh
It's
my.
incredibly hard, especially if you have a thriving, growing business with more
Mm.
responsibilities, more transactions. The volume is just going to get heavier and heavier. And at some point, you either going to decide, is my time worth it working on this? Or should I work and focus on growing the business and get this delegated off my plate? Because one, I hate it. Two, maybe I'm not great at it anyways. And three, what I really need is just the outcome of someone categorizing and reconciling everything so that I know it's accurate and answering maybe a few questions, but getting that profit and loss statement, reviewing it, and making decisions based on that instead of spending all the hours doing all the work that someone else could probably do for you at an affordable rate.
So it's a better use of your time, and it makes better management decisions because you can do the things only you can do. I had a boss who was like, he loved data, and he was like, he was a doctor of something. It was at the mental health hospital, so I'm sure he was a psychologist. Anyways, and he also had a business degree. Anyways, he was great, but he loved data, but he didn't get all the data himself. He like had teams of people track things to make decisions about like just it was about patient flow and stuff, but it was he had the data to be able to say, oh, we need more staff here, or oh, we need, this is underutilized, or our retention is this, because he had the data, but he didn't spend 30 hours collecting the data. He just had the spreadsheets, and we did the data, and it was a very data driven
Mhm.
um, organization, but it also gave like clarity and confidence as you move forward. So what you're talking about makes a lot of sense with the financials, because if you don't have the data to move, you can move, but are you sure it's like a safe move? So yeah.
Data gives you clarity and a path
Yeah.
forward. And knowing that you have good data that has, good integrity and has been done accurately allows you to now step into the strategic thinking position that a CEO and owner should be operating in, because someone else has gathered that information for you. Now you're making those big decisions that only you can make based on the data and inputs that you've been given, instead of, again, spending those 30 minutes, 3 hours, whatever it takes to produce it. Take that time and invest it in what are those decisions we want to make to grow and move forward with confidence and clarity, because now we know what's happening in our business.
Yeah, just think, what if you could take the time that you used to spend on your books and do a half afternoon of a strategy session with yourself? Like, I know I'm constantly like working in the business and doing stuff, but I feel like the most growth I have sometimes is when I take half a day or a day to like look at the land, set some goals, chart it out on the calendar. If I'm just if I'm just having little tasks that somebody else could do for a relatively cheap price compared to what I would earn, why not do it? And what could you do with it? Just imagine how good you could be if you did spend that time in a strategy session. So
Yeah.
your future self will thank you. I wanted to get into some of these questions though, about 2025 and getting started off forward. This episode will probably air end of February, beginning of March, so somewhere around there. And it's still early enough in the year to get things set up straight or right and correctly. So what are some of the things that we could start doing in 2025 that our future self will thank us for and put us on a good financial footing?
Yeah. So first we're gonna put on the calendar time to work on the books or outsource it right away so that we know that
Okay?
it's getting done. Step one, because we're gonna start the year right and make sure that this is a priority and it's getting handled, right? So if it's not on the calendar, it probably won't happen. Or delegate that off your plate if
So
it's
if you're
better
doing it
use of your time.
yourself, how many times would you recommend that you are, making sure everything is correct, minimum, and then, what you want?
Yeah, so ideally monthly, you're blocking, 15, 20 minutes to just go through transactions, make sure everything is in the right place. Maybe it takes you 30 minutes depending on the size of your practice. And then if you can get to weekly, it might be easier because you only have to spend maybe 5 minutes categorizing
Mm-hmm.
things. So it's just a trade-off on, what works better for your schedule. And it's time where you're dedicating and loving on your business finances that's going to pay dividends back to you one day if you understand what's going on with the numbers. And that's the first step, right? Is just being aware. And if you're outsourcing this to a bookkeeper, then maybe you're spending a lot less time just reviewing the outcome of that information that's coming to you. So even then, putting something on the calendar that says, check my financial report from what I've gotten back from our team, it's really important because they're going to have questions and want to make sure that things are right and ensuring that you're having that time to review. So that's step one, just
And
to
I
get us
think
started.
doing it early is better than like, oh, when can I do it this week to do it? It's the end of the month, I got to do it, or the beginning of the month, whenever you do it. Like, and then finding the time in a busy schedule. I can't remember. The trick was to put something on your calendar 3 weeks ahead, because next week is probably full. The week after that is, you're going to struggle to find time. But 3 weeks from now, you're going to have time. So if you can't do it this week or next week, don't like, oh, I can't do it, I don't have time. Just go out, go do it when you can do it. Like, schedule it out far enough ahead of time that it's on the calendar. Because I know for me, if it's on the calendar, if it gets done. If it's not on the calendar and it's on a piece of paper somewhere, do the booking. It just don't. It, like, other things swallow up that time. So schedule
Mhm.
it, make it a priority. Great. What else? What else you got?
Okay, the next, you want to go look at what has happened in your business in the last year and start to audit some of the expenses. Where did your money go? And is that still giving us the return on investment or value benefit that we expected? Because things might have changed and maybe you haven't just had a moment to sit back and look at your business and say, wow, we're still spending money on this thing and then we forgot completely and we haven't used in the last 5 months. It's time to cancel it. Or maybe
Yeah.
reallocate those funds to a new thing that's going to give you the new benefit that you're looking for. Maybe you're overspending in some categories that got a little out of control, and it's time to just revisit. It's not about judging yourself. It's not about being sorry about the decisions we made in the past. We're really looking for opportunities where we can reallocate our hard-earned dollars to the right things for the business going forward. And that might look differently because we might be achieving different goals and it's time to reassess. So going through that expense audit, pull up the details, ask questions. Why did my software expenses go up? We
Mm-hmm.
hire more people. Okay, great. Are we still going to use that same software, right? Are we paying, for office supplies? Maybe you got a little out of hand last year and we want to rein it in. Or maybe we want to say, you know what, we did not spend enough in that category and we need to double the amount that we're spending going forward because it's important for the business to continue to grow in that category. So evaluating to just, again, allocate to the right categories, not about judgment, not about why did I spend that? It's more about, okay, going forward, we're going to do it differently. And here's our opportunity to hit the reset button and do it the right way going into the new year.
Yeah, that makes me think there's probably 100 ways like businesses can't be profitable, but if there's two categories, like the death of 1,000 cuts, like 6,000 subscriptions that you're like, oh, it's only $5 here, 10 extra dollars here, but then it's like hundreds of dollars a month and then thousands of dollars a year. You're like, oh, I didn't have money to hire that staff, or I didn't have money to do that, but it's actually right there. And then the other thing is, you buy something that you didn't have money for because you didn't know that you didn't observe. So I don't know. That's my layman's view of like taking care of knowing where your money is going, because you could be more profitable if you do it. And so I was thinking about, as you were talking, I'm like, well, I subscribe to Canva and I subscribe to Adobe and I subscribe to like OpenAI, like the AI program, and I have Kajabi that does some of that. Like, I'm just like, is there a way to like smash them together and like only use, I know the Adobe Express works or integrates with Kajabi, so I've been using that a lot more, but I still use Canva for some of my clients. Anyways, but if you
I
don't
hear
have those
you.
conversations, you don't know. And I am on a decent, I'm on a decent subscription with the Adobe products, but I only use like,
Portion of
a
it.
tenth of their
Yeah.
whole platform.
That is such
So,
a great point, though, James. I think what people are not thinking about is maybe I need the free subscription of that software that I'm
mhm,
paying for right now because I'm just not using and
right.
maximizing it. And yeah, you could always go back to paying for the full thing, right? But maybe right now you're just busy and you're not using it. So let's just downgrade temporarily and revisit that decision in 6 months, maybe when we need to pay for the premium. Maybe it's the number of users. I see this often. You just signed up
Oh
for the thing and then
yeah.
you have
Yep.
100 users, but 50 of them have left and you
Yeah.
just forgot to remove them and you're paying for people that are not using anything. So again, collect your money back. Nothing wrong. It just happens, especially when we're busy and business starts to grow fast. So go ahead and just do the cleanup. Who's still using it? Who needs it? Do we have other software that can do it? And then the other powerful thing that people forget is inside of certain softwares, now they're rolling out AI features and other things. You could just upgrade for a nominal fee versus paying the full fee on a different OpenAI
Hmm.
option. So go assess that. Maybe you could save, $5, $10 a month in some of those things. And again, that times number of users times months a year could add up to some dollars. So it's just something to, again, reevaluate. It's a fresh year. Might as well look at it and save yourself a little money in the long term. But don't forget the power of users and then downgrading or the level of support you want in a particular software. That is a good way to save money too.
So yeah, and when you add things, that's also a good time to do it, because I am getting a media company to help me with some of my social media and producing some of the podcasts and stuff. But then, do I really need all the Adobe stuff, like the paid part, because they're going to be doing the heavy lifting of the production? Anyways, stuff to think about.
Yes,
But if you
those are
don't think,
connected.
yeah. But so I could be paying for 3 subscriptions where I only need one, plus somebody else is
Exactly.
doing 90% of the heavy lifting for me. They
Yeah.
they own the program. They're like contractors, so they own the program and they have the tools. Okay, so that's one thing. Are there other things, but other things to do to put ourselves on a good financial foot to start doing in 2025?
Yeah. So now that we're taking care of our data and we know that's going to be handled every month because we already committed to that in the new year, now we want to start thinking about the future. How does that need to look for this year? What are our goals? What are we trying to achieve? Are we bringing on additional hires to our practice? What is happening? How many more sessions are we going to do this year? Are we going to take on more clients? What's happening in your business? And how do you want to grow your practice going forward? So you start to map that out: number of sessions per week, number times number of people. And then you want to understand also, has insurance, costs change? We got to take that into account. Are we paneling with a new insurance? Are we removing an insurance altogether? Like, these are things. Do we have credentialing costs coming up because we're going to add a new team member that needs to be credentialed? We want to just kind of lay all that out and start to figure out what maybe even the next 3 months might look like. We normally do this for a 12-month runway, but we understand that might be a little challenging. So maybe just take a step at the next 3 months. What do you expect to happen? How are things going to change? And start to set some monthly goals, because the other piece of profitability, besides cutting back costs where it makes sense and reallocating correctly, is growing revenue. So what are our new opportunities? Are we offering new services? Are we rolling out assessments, intensives, CU credit? What is going to happen for us to generate additional revenue? And if nothing else, have you revisit your yearly fees to your patients, because it's that time of year where everybody's rolling out their increases, and you might as well get on that bandwagon and make sure you don't get left
it's
behind.
Not a shock because it's the beginning of the year. It's expected. So as you were talking about extra revenue, it made me think, like, this podcast for people who are creating courses, therapists, coaches, helpers, like people who have a business that's running relatively well. They're not starting a course because they need to make a quick buck. They're like, well, how do I help the world a little better with my knowledge? How do I reach more people? How do I expand my growth? How do I become known about my core topic? So, but as you were talking, that's not, even if it's just your time, that's not cheap, right? Like, that's not like you might have to say no to something. Let's say you take 5 hours a week or an hour a day or one half day or something to work on your online course. Well, that time just doesn't come from nowhere. And also, if you depend on that money to like pay your bills, like, oh, I actually do need to work 30 sessions or do 25 to 30 sessions a week, but I'm going to start this online course thing. And I'm not going to have, I don't plan anything, and I'm not going to have any trouble at all making my bills. Like, there's a lot of wisdom in thinking, what do I want to do and how do I get there? And there's opportunity cost and like your time cost and all those things. But if you don't have a plan, it's almost like building on sand, right? Like, you're not building on anything stable.
Yeah, it's not working together. It's kind of working against you in a way, because you might be going this direction and that direction, and it's just counterproductive. So what we say is, just lay out the plan. Even if the plan is not well thought out yet, at least put down your thoughts so far. Okay, so you're going to sacrifice some billable hours to create your online course that eventually will replace that revenue over time. But it might take some time. So you need to know, okay, I created the cash runway and saved up to make sure I can take, quote unquote, that hit on the 5 billable hours I won't have every week for the next 6 weeks, let's say, while I create this. And then my goals for that course is to generate X number of dollars. That means this many people buying it every month. And you get really clear on what you need to achieve to replace that income. It probably won't happen overnight, and you got to give it some time. But that becomes your goal, is to replace that 5 clinical billable hours that you lost, created it, and gain that and then some back on the back end of your course being successful in generating additional revenue as a new revenue stream in your business. And making sure that you do the math, right? Because I think a lot of people shy away from the math. I hear a lot from therapists, I just not good at numbers. I don't know that if I can do that math. The math is simple. It's number of people times price point. Like, literally, it can be that simple. It's that many course sales times the price I charge for course sales equals the revenue that I sacrifice by not seeing patients for those hours. So that is the trade-off, and it takes time, but the goal is to map that out so that you have a roadmap to success, back to producing the kind of money you want. And then we know that once courses scale, they don't need your time unless you have a
Right.
time component attached to it, then you can just keep growing it and have it take off and generate some, passive income in that way. Once it's completed, you put the effort on the front end. We all know it's not passive because you have to do the work
Yeah.
first, but
There's
after
work on
that,
the front end for sure.
it comes back.
But like let's say you do that for 3 months and then you use it for 3 years. like it can be
Exactly.
generating income for multiple years. But you do have to promote it and have marketing, but whatever. That's another that's a whole nother business, really.
That's
There's
another
people who do
episode.
marketing. Yeah. That's another business. All right. So I have other questions. Where do you want to go from here? What are some things we should probably start doing or do at the beginning or end of the year to make it easy for ourselves?
Yeah, at the end of the year, we want to just take a look and see, did we meet our goals and expectations around our business growth? Is our profit higher or lower than the year before? Did we spend more money in certain categories than we had expected? Did that grow over time? Did it shrink? And maybe
Mm,
that's not necessarily the right thing for your business. So just kind of looking at your numbers, and the numbers are telling you the story of what happened in the year. And ultimately, are your results what you expected and what you want to see of your business? Especially around owners compensation, I find a lot of people are overlooking that aspect of it, and we want to make sure that you're compensated well for the work that you're doing in your business, that is not an afterthought, that it's part of why we want to do this, outside of flexibility and freedom, of course, is making sure you get a good paycheck from it. And if you're
mm.
not there yet, that is okay. Is what's the plan to get to that ideal state, where you're compensated at the right level? And those are the things that we're evaluating, with clients on like the current year, what happened, kind of doing a recap of the past year, so that in the new year, we know, going in with new expectations, what do we want to achieve, how we're going to accomplish it, because we know what we were able to do the previous year.
Yeah. So setting goals and then reviewing your goals. Like
Yeah.
you like you get what you measure, right? Right? Like whatever the outcomes follow, you could hope for progress or you can work for progress. And if a dream is I'm going to mess up the quote, but if you don't write it down, it doesn't happen. Like people are way more they accomplish more when they write down what they're supposed to do. But then also don't just let it sit there on the piece of paper. Use it, like evaluate it, bring it out, and say, "Oh, this is the goal. This is what we can do." Do you this is how you work with people? Do you work in quarters? Like, do you set goals for the quarter? Do you have yearly goals when you do goals for people, and then you break it
Yeah.
into chunks? Like how would that work in your office?
Yeah, so we actually do monthly goals,
Okay.
quarterly and yearly, because we want to get that specific on what are we trying to achieve every month. And then obviously some months are worse than others or better than we thought. And so we want to also normalize quarterly. But ultimately,
Mm,
the yearly goal is what we're striving for, but we want to continue to measure progress as it's happening, not just at the tail end when everything is done and you can do anything about changing it. We want to do it while we're in it in the year, adjusting and pivoting and overcoming obstacles and objections as things start to happen, because business things happen and we can't control it, and we sometimes have to deal with situations, and then we do our best to get back on track towards our goals.
yeah, one of the illustrations I've heard is like an airplane on autopilot is not going in a straight line. It's making micro switches, corrections as they go, because the sooner it makes a correction, the more on course it is. It's not just driving in a straight line driving. It's not just flying in a straight line. I think that the monthly check-in and making sure you're going in the right direction is going to make sure you're going to end up very close to your end goal, rather than 6 months in you realize you're like 2 degrees off. But 2 degrees off for 6 months, you're nearly in the ditch. It's really hard to pull something out of the ditch without a tow truck or whatever. I just mixed a lot of metaphors there with flying and
We get it though.
driving and ditches. But that makes sense though, right? Like keeping track of your goals during the year and reviewing them and making course corrections at set intervals is way easier than trying to course correct when there's very little time, like, in March or something.
Yeah, and pilots, fly planes with dashboards, so they're
Hmm.
checking in on their metrics often
Hmm.
to make sure they're on track, and they're also not just winging it, being like, "Well, good
Winging it.
luck. We might go to LA or we might land somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
knows?" Like they're not doing that. They're in
Yeah. They have a
control.
flight plan. Yep.
Exactly. They have a flight plan. They have a path. They know how long it's going to take them together. They know where they're going. They know where they're going to land. And if they're not on track to land there, like you said, they're making corrections, they're making adjustments. And yes, things change sometimes. They have to fly the longer route to get to where they wanted to get to. But my point is, they are still charting the same course, and they're doing so by looking at their metrics and evaluating where they're at every point in time, not just waiting till they land somewhere to be like, oh, that's not what we wanted to land.
No,
How crazy would that be, right?
I'm almost out of fuel. I better find a
Yeah.
landing strip. Like,
A little
yeah.
late for that.
Yeah. All right. So two last questions. One, if somebody wants to get started, what is something basic they can do right now to get started? What's the next task they should do to get started? Help saving themselves time and agony, the future self. Like what's one thing they could do?
Yeah, maybe at this point they're a little bit behind and they're just really scared to even open it up and look at it because, it's going to feel daunting and
Mm-hmm.
overwhelming. And we know that when that happens, we're going to shy away from it. So, step one is to look at it. And it feels like a big ask at times. And I understand if it's your first time doing it and you're like, oh, I don't know. But guess what? Your accountant's going to make you do it because tax time is coming and you're going to need something to file on it. And you do not want to be against the deadline trying to sort it all out then. So you got some time now. Open it up, look at it. How bad does it look? Sometimes it's not as bad as you thought. Sometimes it's just the dread is bigger than the actual situation. So let's just take a peek and see, okay, where are we at? Two is you can always ask for help if you're just feeling like at a loss and you don't have the time. Maybe you have the resources. So you can always reach out for help. Know that that is always an option if you can afford it and it's in your budget. Um, and make sure you don't set yourself up for failure again next year by starting to procrastinate on that this year. So get started on the right foot starting this year while you're dealing with the past, and make sure that you set that calendar time and make sure that you're keeping up with it and that you have the right accounting software in place to help you save time, because you know what, you're going to pay for it, but it's going to save you time because everything will come to one place where you can review it all at once. And then make it fun. Like, go to your favorite coffee shop, buy yourself a little coffee and a croissant or whatever's your favorite thing to do, and sit down in a great music environment and maybe make it a little bit more palatable to
Mm-hmm.
sit down and do the
Yeah.
thing that you don't want to do, because that could set off that reward system in your brain that you're like, oh, this is actually not that bad because I get a little coffee and I get a little thing and it's like not terrible, at least. Or
Yeah.
maybe it might feel that way.
Yeah, I remember you took me back a little bit to when I had to write like long papers in school, and I would put them off because I thought they were going to be hard or I didn't know where to get the information. And then I would, in college, you worry, like you look, you get the syllabus ahead of time. You're like, oh, I got to write this 3 months from now. And then you worry about it for 3 months. And then like, oh, I don't want to get started because you're afraid. And then when you get started, it's like, oh, it's not that bad. But, one, I'd already spent all this mental energy on it for 3 months. And two, it just wasn't as good as it could have been if I would have done it over time. So I think you're doing yourself a favor if you start planning for ahead of time. You don't have to worry about it. You're going to know, you're going to have that burden off your shoulders, and you're going to be able to make better decisions. Because if you don't have that
Mhm.
information, you just can't make great decisions. You're gonna land your plane somewhere, so you might as well
We don't
plan
know
on where
where.
you're gonna land it. All right, hey. Carla, this was great. Where can people find you? What's your webpage? Just tell us a little bit about your services again.
Yeah, so we are at wealthworthwithin.com. We have Let's Get Started. You can schedule a call to talk to us to see if your financial support needs can be met with our team's support and expertise. We also provide a free newsletter on our website with a lot of very relevant content and situations that we're seeing our clients and everyone we serve go through, and providing some actionable tips like we did today for you to start to tackle that on your own and get better at finances. And if nothing else, follow us on social media at Wealth Worth Within. We're very active on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, putting a lot
Oh,
of
good.
free educational content for anyone who wants to tune in and get a little bit better about the money. We just want you all to have profits, be sustainable, and have the impact you want to have with your patients long term.
Awesome. Well, thank you. All that will be in the show notes. And one of my goals this year is to be a little more active on social media. So I'll definitely be, I think we're connected on LinkedIn for sure. So I'll be definitely looking at that stuff. So Carla, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me again, James.
All right, listeners, thanks for listening to the show, and maybe schedule some time on your calendar to look at your numbers and start planning for your future, because your future self is going to thank you. It's now time to go put your mission in motion.